what's interesting about like the jobs right now is I feel like if you go to most websites, they are hiring for developers, but very few are hiring for entry level. So that's really tricky. It's like they all want developers that have had at least 5-7 years experience. So.
Yeah, I have to say, it depends, but I almost never see and have never seen postings for entry level. They just don't post them very often. I mean, and certainly positions that I've applied for in the past were not specified to be like entry level, and I just was like, oh, I think I could do it. Just give it a shot. I mean, the worst they can tell you is no. That's the absolute worst thing can happen. And my philosophy, or at least I tell myself, I mean, I'm always scared to do it, but I say, I already don't have that job. You know what I mean? Like, I might as well just try and see what happens. So, all right. Well, welcome everyone to the end of week 5. So exciting. Only 3 more weeks, can't believe it. So we're getting to kind of just more exciting and more intricate parts of the application. So I'm really excited to see the demos today. So Matthew's actually going to run demos, so I'll hand it off to you.
Sure. Let's see, does anyone want to volunteer to go first, or?
I'll go first since mine's pretty simple.
Okay, sounds great, thanks. I guess you'll be doing the talking was it you and Tiana this week, or is it?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, give me 1 second just to pull up the code also, and then I'll share my screen.
No worries. Yeah, I'm really interested to see the final. I always look looking at it, but then there's so many. You guys had a lot of great dialogue back and forth, and a lot of good changes. So I don't even think I've seen the final version yet. So I'm excited to see what came up.
Okay, so this week, Tiana and I were tasked with creating a delete function. And basically, when you delete something, it should delete it from the database, and therefore all of the information about it, so the purchase information will be deleted with it. So it's pretty straightforward. We created a delete button and then an alert that someone has to confirm that they're deleting it since they'll lose all their information. So I guess they don't want Kiwis anymore. Delete. And then thanks to Kat, we added a very specific message so that the user understands the gravity of the delete. So if they press cancel, it listens for that confirm, and then the data is still there. But when you go ahead and say, okay, it's gone forever. And that's the basic part for the front end. If we take a look at the back end, actually, sorry, quickly switch. Well, this is fine because it's just our code. So in the list item, or let's go to the Firebase first. Tiana actually had most of this pulled up before we started, which was great. But it's very, very simple. We're just getting the collection name and the item ID that we want to delete, and then sending that to the database, and then it's gone. So on here, this was actually interesting. Neither one of us had done window.confirm before. And we were at first thinking about doing a modal, but it seemed like those were closely tied to styling libraries. So we figured we'd wait to do that until we choose a library. But down here, so we import the delete item function, and then we gave it a button down here that called that function, which passed in through the item object, which then allowed us to pull out the ID, but also the name, so that we could use that in our response. And that's about it. There's just a ternary down here. So this function, window.confirm, returns true or false depending on the user input, which is why we can then use it here. If they confirm, then it responds true and it goes to delete item, otherwise nothing happens. And I think that's about it. Are there any questions?
No,
Great.
that's great. That's the first time I've actually seen window myself. To be honest, I've usually done alert as well. Yeah, that's a really cool feature, being able to get kind of a Boolean based on the user input. What was that comment about added some flair in the code there?
Oh, I think at first Tiana wanted to add interpolation so that you were specifically saying the item name versus just you want to delete said item, a generic item.
Right.
So she added that in, and then Kat recommended we do an even more detailed one explaining that you can't go back.
Yeah, no, it's a good call. Is any of the other, Kat or Quinn, do you have any questions for any of that? I know you.
No, I just loved window.confirm. It was so cool. Like, such a great idea.
Was it something you knew about going into this, or had you no, you Google searching or? Awesome, Quinn.
Yeah, no, it all seems very straightforward. I didn't know about window.confirm either. It kind of like, I mean, I haven't looked yet, but I kind of want to go on the path and see like what certain browsers give you as, there's alert, there's confirm, like, is there anything else? Like, so, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I'd assume, Lauren, you might know more. There's probably a number of methods that we're able to use with that.
Yeah, I think, I forget what happened. Oh, sorry. Wait.
Oh, either Lauren.
Oh, yeah. Well, for me, when I was looking at it, it popped up as a suggestion when we looked up alert in like W3. So there were other ones also, different window methods that I forget what the rest of them were, but there were several. So I can send a link. But sorry, go ahead, Lauren, if you have other.
No, I didn't have anything to add.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, Lauren. Kat and Quinn, when do you want to share your screen?
Yeah. Kat, you okay with me sharing the screen? Okay.
Yeah. Go nuts.
Cool.
All right. Yeah, I guess I can explain what we did here. We kind of overcomplicated our AC just to take on some additional challenge this week because we were supposed to be updating the frequency in our Firebase database, but we both kind of wanted to write our own estimates function just because we're both really jazzed about it. And then I think we came across the estimates function. We're like, no, we want to try to do this. So it's pretty straightforward when you're just looking at the app ultimately. So when you check an item as purchased on the shopping list.
The whole app full screen?
Yeah, it's full. You can see both windows.
Oh, full screen.
There we go. Now it's full screen. So yeah, when you check an item off, Quinn, it ultimately will then add the purchase date as it did before, but it takes that purchase date ultimately and uses that to calculate the frequency with which a user purchases that item based on all of the purchase dates, less any like outlying data. So if we want to go to the code then to show what we did, where do you want to start? I guess we could start at the estimates.
Yeah, up to you.
Yeah, so what we did here was ultimately when a user adds a new purchase date, we calculate the differences between all of the purchase dates, so we get those spans in between, and then we find the mean of how often a person purchased. So, if it's every 7 days, then ultimately the mean would be 7 if a user's purchase history is super consistent. But generally, people aren't that consistent. So we're finding the mean and then finding what the standard deviation from that mean is for each of the items. And then using the standard deviation that we found to calculate the z-index, which is ultimately like a a calculation of risk. So anything over 1 ultimately is something that's like risky or outside of like the normal sort of data in a curve. So it sort of chops off the end pieces. So you're getting all of the data sort of normalized in the bulk of the curve. And then we're using that to recalculate the mean with only that normalized data. So let's say you go on holiday for a month. And normally you buy garlic every, 3 days. But then for that month, you don't buy garlic because you're on holiday, and then you come back. It'll sort of get rid of that month-long span, so that your frequency is more based on consistent user history rather than on more recent purchases, or just trying to calculate like an average of all, because that one data point is really going to skew things, and it's going to be really, really hard to get things back on track. And we want our users to sort of be rewarded for their more consistent behavior with more accurate predictions based on that. So if we want to go to then I guess like the Firebase.js to sort of show how we added it. Quinn, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, sure. So we wanted to update our frequency if we had more than 2 purchase dates attached to a shopping list item. Initially, we tried to do this we tried to attach a snapshot listener to see if we could basically change the results, and then as they come back, as they update in the app snapshot, we would take those results and see what changed, and basically update our frequency based on that. But Lauren had a great suggestion, Lauren Y, to basically do it all at once. We were kind of just I think we chose one way to do it, and we were okay, this will work, and then we just kept going, and we're it worked, but it wasn't the most optimal solution, right? But idea. So we ended up just aggregating that array, including the current purchase date, if the array was greater than 2, and then if there was no frequency change, then we figured there's no reason to update the frequency. So we just don't. So we just keep the frequency the same.
Yeah, we ultimately were going to leave the frequency as what the user said. We had been having a conversation about the language associated with the ad item, because it's based on the date that somebody would purchase it relative to when they're adding it, rather than what their prediction is of how often they would buy an item. So we're still sort of trying to talk about that and figure out how to get that initial frequency to best reflect what the user's behavior with that item is going to be. But we're still chatting about it just to figure it out, because if it's almost Thanksgiving and you need to buy a turkey in 2 days, but you only ever buy a turkey for Thanksgiving, you'd probably write soon, but you're not going to buy that item very often. So it's sort of, that frequency doesn't really play into what the user's behavior is going to be. So we were just trying to figure out if we should update language or find a way to sort of have it relative to when they add it at first and then change it beyond that. But I think we're also, again, just getting really into the nitty gritty about what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Yep. I think I don't think there are any other changes.
I think we did pass one additional item, which was from the selection, as per Lauren Y's suggestion. When somebody purchases the item, we're passing the purchase dates from the result state ultimately for that specific item, and then adding the current purchase date to it. Just because it was, there was a bit of a lag between when the new purchase date was being pushed to Firebase, and then the snapshot at app level was grabbing it and then putting it to the state. So instead of trying to go around all of that, we ultimately were just marrying the new data with the existing array that existed in state, and then basing this calculation on that. Well, the push to Firebase is happening at the same time, so that there wasn't any sort of force, or we weren't being forced to ultimately do any sort of crazy asynchronous stuff, which is what we thought we had to do initially.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Sorry, did you want to something else, Gwen?
Oh, I'm pretty sure that's like it's like an optimistic update in that sense. Like we're assuming that we won't get any errors from the Firebase from adding our new purge state to Firebase. So I mean, it's like because like before we were like with Cal State, we were waiting to see that it actually saved, and then we're trying to make a decision based on those results coming back to us. But it's not as it works the same both ways, and we save that extra trips in the database essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, no, I love that you consider the outliers and ways that you could kind of trim those off so it wasn't skewing like your mean too much. And I'll have to check with Andrew, but I think you might be the first team to ever write your own estimate script, which is really cool. I love that you tackled that. Lauren, why? And I guess Lauren B too, but any questions on this demo?
Oh, well, mine is, I'm just curious. I have like a math background, but I'm curious if you guys like were very familiar with this stuff or if you learned it going into this. So.
I took statistics in college. Like I went to school for commerce. So I hadn't really thought about it in a long time, and it just sort of like hit me. And like I passed the idea over to Quinn about it, and he was like, "Yeah, this sounds real fun."
Yeah, I love how detailed, I mean, really careful you guys were with your calculation. That's really cool.
Yeah, I had basically the same question because I thought for myself, oh, how will I approach this problem? I know. The Z-index, which in this case is not a stacking order of things on the DOM. Cool. And I love, I'm going to talk about this in our learning module too, but I think the commenting is just so perfect for this file. It's really, really good.
Yeah, I'd say this
initially too.
Is it?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying this is definitely a file that could use extra commenting for people who aren't as up to speed on their math skills.
Yeah, we figured we didn't want to like hide it in like the PR as well, just to make sure that like any like person coming into the project would look at this like big bulky file, because like the estimates file that we were initially working with also had like a lot of comments about what was going on and why it was happening. So we wanted to mirror that just to make sure that like, yeah, because like I know that Lauren said that she was like tutoring math, so I was like, okay, I have to make sure that I also comment on this so that like if any of this stuff is off, she'll be able to call me on it.
I was really impressed with how, yeah, the comments also, it just made it really easy for all of us that were jumping in to see what was happening. So thanks for doing that.
Awesome. Was there something that you wanted to say, Quinn, before we wrap up demos? You're starting.
I mean,
okay.
I guess I definitely wasn't as I don't. I mean, I like statistics. It isn't like me. So like Kat was very like instrumental and like definitely like I guess I would say like spearheading and like really taking like diving a little bit deeper into some of this stuff. But yeah, like it was definitely the way to go for sure. And like catching up and figuring out as I go like some of this stuff. Yeah, it was definitely worth it.
Yeah, and Quinn was like super able to like also get into like the JavaScript of things when I was like getting too in my head about the math, to sort of like make sure that we were doing the functions in a way that made sense for like both the math but also for like us as like developers, which was awesome. And like Lauren, like why you were also like super instrumental in us being able to like put this together this week, and I really appreciated you making that like additional branch, because like I feel like I was just like at a bit of a disconnect and like so down that one path. So like it was super awesome that you were able to sort of pull us out of it.
I just wanted to make sure, like, that I was explaining myself well, because I figured, like, kind of texting it back and forth, it didn't really, it's easier to show what I was thinking without, I didn't want to, like, impose my opinion or anything, but.
No, we appreciated your opinion so much. It made things so much easier, and we were able to, like, marry it with, like, existing code and, like, just remove so much nonsense that we had gone down.
Nice.
Yeah. It was very awesome.
That's great. Any final comments before we move on to the learning module? Okay, awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Lauren, I guess I'll pass it back to you.
Sure. All right, let me share my screen. Can everyone see my my slides? Thumbs up. Thank you. So, segueing from those really awesome demos, so good, and the fantastic communication that was happening this week, and it's just so much collaboration. I love it. This week we're talking about communication as developers, and specifically we're really going to talk about what written communication can look like, what kinds of written communication you'll be doing as developers. So first we'll talk about documentation. So documentation is the kind of written communication that you'll use when, let's say, you're considering whether or not to use a new library in your application, or revisiting other big kind of technical decisions. So for example, documentation is useful for being able to see, okay, what did I do again? What was I working on? Why did I do that? Second, and this is something that I used at my job super recently, it's a great tool for revisiting technical decisions. So for example, we recently switched from using Glamorous as our CSS and JS solution to using the library Emotion. And when we were trying to decide between using Emotion and using styled components, we wanted to go back and revisit our decision. Like, why did we choose Glamorous in the first place a couple of years ago, when really like style components was sort of the big thing to use at the time? But we hadn't documented that decision, so people sort of had a vague idea of why we had chosen Glamorous, but it would have been so much more useful for us to have that documented somewhere. Great documentation is so useful for onboarding new team members, and especially in this time where almost all of us are working remotely as developers, having wonderful written documentation for that onboarding process. Who can I contact about HR things? How do I download the repo? How do I get access to the databases that I need access to, etc., is so fantastic. Like, in addition to be able to chat with somebody through Zoom, it's wonderful to just have your own documentation so you feel empowered to walk through things step by step. And it avoids institutional knowledge. So I'm sure all of us have had this experience, like you're starting any kind of new job, and there's always that one person who knows absolutely everything, and you're always like having to ask that person, how do I do this? How do I do this? When really, this could be documented somewhere and you could find it yourself and be empowered to learn on your own without always having to rely on that one person who may not be there forever, right? Like, it just avoids that cycle of always having that one person who knows everything and everyone has to rely on that person. So writing things down will help you learn. I've been really challenging myself to do this year. It's one of my 2020 goals to, as I'm tackling new technical problems that I haven't had to do before, I write down my process, like, oh, how did I solve this problem? Writing it down helps me remember it better, of course. And then I have a reference like right there on my computer that I can go look at and say, oh, that's how I do it again. And then it really empowers and lifts up all of your team members, again, avoiding that institutional knowledge. There's that documentation that exists that everyone can go find out what they need to know from your documentation. So here's some quick tips on making your documentation really excellent. So one, you want to write for the person who knows the least. So if you think of documentation for maybe a JavaScript library that you really, really like, it's going to really help you get started. It doesn't skip steps, right? I find that documentation can be so lacking when it just assumes that I know maybe the 3 steps that they just assume that I know, and then they start at step 4, right? It's really useful to have documentation that gives you detailed steps. So you want to write for the person who knows the least, but optimize for the person who just needs a quick reference. So, and that comes through the formatting of your documentation. So let me show you an example. So this is some documentation that I wrote. So recently we had to, we maintain a component library for a number of applications that we use. And we needed to have the ability to support multiple themes in that component library, including supporting different icon sets for all of the different themes, etc. So I wanted to give as much detail as possible. Here's my background research, et cetera, et cetera. These are the different approaches that we considered. This is future work and remaining questions. Like, these are things that we still don't quite know. And then, so there's lots of detail, but it's organized pretty well. Like, there's a table of contents, so people can just read the table of contents and click to the section that they want to look at quickly. There is a TLDR, like, if somebody doesn't want to read this entire page, or they were really close to this decision, maybe they just need to know the brief summary of what happened. And then I like to sprinkle in emojis just to help give a little more context and make it a little more fun to read, because documentation can be boring sometimes. And so it is nice to make it fun and cute and spice it up a little bit. So yeah, so that's documentation. Pull requests. So this really relates back to our learning module on code reviews. So writing really good pull request descriptions, which you all do, gives reviewers context on your code. So you think about how much time you're spending on the new feature that you're adding, or the bug that you're trying to solve, or the issue that you're working on. You're really immersed in that code for a long time, right? You understand the inner workings of what's happening. But somebody who's going to review your code doesn't have that same context. Like, they don't have the knowledge that you have. So writing a great PR description will help give them that context and help them review your code better. And ultimately, it's going to help that code get accepted and merged into main a lot faster. This is also really important. So I've found that a really big part of interviewing, like, usually we have some kind of technical challenge, and then you will be like walking and talking through your code during the interview process. So having a really great PR description for the code that you've written for that challenge is really, really useful. Like, it looks, not only does it make you look great, but it'll help you remember what you did. It'll help you in the moment. So really good PR descriptions, having screenshots is really nice. It just gives that reviewer visual feedback, like, oh, this is what it used to look like, and now it's supposed to look like this. Great. Having videos, if it's a change that needs to be seen through time, that's really useful as well. Links to different resources maybe that you use, like Stack Overflow links or blog posts. Oh, hey, Katie. Or blog posts that you reference to try to solve your issue. That's really great. And then any permalinks, so a permalink in GitHub to code that you referenced. And then this is so important, doing a self-review of your PR before others are going to review your code. Again, it gives that reviewer way more context about what you did and why you did what you did. And it really will help you get to the end results a lot faster. So let me show you, I'll show you a really good pull request here, pull request description. We really recently added the PR template, which helps know what to put in the pull request. So I love that so much. But so here's a good PR description from someone from, this is actually from Stacy, who was in the first cohort. And this shows the types of changes that were made. It gives the acceptance criteria, and she's indicated, okay, yep, I checked all those things off. It tells me what issue was closed. It gives a short description, and then a more detailed description for each of the issues, for each of the AC. It gives me the testing steps and QA criteria, which is so important. It's really great for this app in particular if you include in your PR description a particular, what are we calling that? User token to use to test, like what's a good user token to use. That's really helpful. And then here she's included some extra information about things that she didn't get to, like, okay, we still need to do this. We haven't covered this yet. So that's good for the reviewer to know as well. And then one more thing that I want to get people's opinions on, because this is not something that I do. I try to write 90% of the time good commit messages, and then the other 10% are like, oh, this is terrible. Sorry about this. So Stacy writes really, really detailed commit messages. She'll leave the short commit message and then longer commit messages. Does anyone else do something like this?
How do you even do that? Have like a main?
So I think that you have to do it in VI. You know how sometimes when you merge, if you're merging main into your branch and solving any, what am I looking for? Merge conflicts, and you can leave a comment in VI. That's why I never do it, because I'm terrified I'm going to get stuck in there. But I think that that's how she does it. We'd have to look it up, because I don't know. Because I never do it personally.
Yeah, I've never done it myself, but I do think I remember seeing in like the option, like a comment field. Never written into that, but yeah, I'm trying to, I don't even know off the top of my head what that is. I think it was when I'm in yeah, sorry, I have to go back and look. But yeah, I do remember seeing that, but that's a good idea. I've never thought about elaborating further.
Yeah, and this, I mean, again, like this is really useful for like, if you're doing a side project or if you're doing a code challenge, having this kind of robust commit messaging will really help you and your reviewer to see that. Like that's where I feel it would be really, really useful, is for job interviewing personally. Cool. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
No, go for it.
Oh, just a quick comment. Someone told me once, I think I was doing a hackathon, and they recommended doing the commit messages like a verb, blah, blah, blah. So always being like added this functionality or created, blah, blah, blah. So that's the kind of template I usually use to show like the action that I took. But yeah, if you guys have any other suggestions of even writing the one-line commit message of how we should format that, I'm curious to hear.
Yeah, that's a good idea, actually. I don't necessarily think of that specifically when I'm writing commit messages, but usually I commit a lot when I'm writing code. And I won't always push it up right away, but usually like I'll have a plan in mind before I start writing code. And then I'll do sort of step by step. Okay, first I did this, and then I'll write that commit message, like git add dot, git commit, blah, 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 did this certain specific thing, right? And then I'll commit that so that I have, when I look at the history of my commit messages, I can see what each commit did. And then I can go back and reference each of those commits and be like, oh yeah, you know what? I didn't need to do this part. And so I can like get rid of that specific commit if that's not code that I needed to write. So it is really, for me, I recommend to keep your commits pretty small.
I just found something really interesting. I'll post it in the chat, but it looks like you can add multiple messages. Like you can do,
really?
like, yeah, like you can do -m, summary, -m, description.
Oh, maybe that's what Stacey's doing. Cool. Yeah.
I'll post it in the chat. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And we can look at it. Awesome. All right, so that is a particularly good PR description, but like even inside projects, challenge yourself to add a PR template like that so that it forces you to really detail what you're doing, and you'll thank yourself later. It's just really useful to have good PR descriptions. So I'm super excited about the Quinn and Kat's PR this week because you had such awesome commenting. So again, commenting will give your team more context when they're like actively tracing through code that you wrote in the past. In general, people will say focus on the why this code was written rather than what the code specifically does. Although in this case, I think it was super important that you commented like what your code was doing. Stop. Doesn't that drive you crazy? Like Zoom has that toolbar at the top and then you can't click on. Cool. So, I mean, honestly, without the commenting in this file, I mean, the variable names and the function names were really, really good, but I still wouldn't have known, like, I don't, what do you mean get Z index? We don't need a Z index in this particular code, right? When I hear Z index, I think, oh, it's a modal and it needs to be above the rest of everything. So having the comments in here are exactly what other developers need to understand what's happening. So the commenting in here was just top notch. So this is an example of the kind of thing that you really need to comment. And I've been, you know, it's interesting. I've been on different teams where commenting is encouraged. And I've been on teams that it gets super frowned upon, no commenting ever, like, which I find a little silly, right? I don't comment a ton, but if I need to, if an explanation needs to be in there, like, okay, this is a Safari bug, for example, that's why I did this really weird CSS, because nothing else will fix it. So it's important to comment things like that and to comment things that developers just won't necessarily know off the top of their head, right? And it's like Kat, like what you were saying, it's nice to have it right in the file rather than in the pull request. So people don't have to go and search for that pull request. Cool, so nice, we've been having a good discussion. What are some of the, what experiences have you had with documentation, commenting? Do people have philosophies themselves for like what they like to comment, or if they like to comment a lot in their code, or what they've heard on the street regarding commenting?
I've always heard that comments get stripped out when you like actually push. So I don't know. I guess that confuses me in the sense of like you're not really adding anything extra to your bundle when you like actually push to like your production. I guess like, you know, for people who are against comments.
Like you've had experiences where it gets stripped out when you push. Is that what you're saying?
Like in the sense that like you can like you it's it shouldn't really matter like whether you're able to comment or not, because it doesn't go to like the main branch. Like you don't see that in your like production code, right?
Right.
Yeah. So okay, I guess yeah. More of a statement. I guess I'm just a little like confused on like why people
Confused about
don't like it.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, from my side, I kind of like what you were saying. I comment where I feel like if I looked at this without, I try to make sure my variables and my function names kind of explain what it's doing. But like if I look at that and those still don't kind of help me understand, that's usually when I write just like a little one-line comment. Yeah, I remember when I first started, I commented absolutely everything, and then I nothing, and so now I've kind of gone more towards the middle. So really, I just use it for when things like really need explaining. But yeah, I've heard about doing more the why than exactly what it's doing. Unless it's really, really intricate, then maybe it could use a little bit of explaining what it's doing. But yeah, I think that's a good tip. Yeah, I try to find a healthy balance when it comes to comments. Yeah, I don't understand why they'd be stripped out before pushing, but I'm not sure.
I found search functionality to be invaluable. Like sometimes I go to like documentation online, and it's just like a wall of text of like functions, and you're just like, what? Like I
What?
can't just search for what I need. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some really
Yeah.
good, one really good library, actually that I'm just gonna throw out a recommendation here for a UI library to use. Let's see if I can find it. Reach. Yeah, Reach UI is a really good user interface library when you're looking for components like modals, tabs. They have all kinds of great and accessible components. So this is a really nice library to use. And it's not like using Bootstrap or Material that it has lots of styling built in. But if you're looking for particular components, like for example, I've used their tabs before. We're thinking about using their modal, but they have really good documentation for their, and within GitHub too, like when you look in their code, it like explains what everything's doing, and it has really robust commenting. So I really trust what they're doing. Reach UI.
Yeah, I've definitely not used a library before because the documentation was too bad. Even though I heard like really good things, there was just like, I can't even get off the ground with this because it's not explained clearly enough.
Because it's too hard to use. Like why? Exactly. Cool. Anyone else? Nope. All right, let's move on to, let me close out of some of my tabs here. So let's see what we have. Oh, I just closed that one. One moment. GitHub, oh wait, pardon me. Collab here. Projects. All right. Cool. So let's see, who are our pairs this week? So Lauren and Quinn are working together, and Tiana and Kat are working together this week. And these are the two issues that we're doing. So issue 12, as a user, I want to view a list of my shopping list items in order of how soon I'm likely to need to buy each of them again, so that it's clear what I need to buy soon. So the possible item states are as follows. Either you need to buy it soon, which is fewer than 7 days. Need to buy kind of soon, so that's sometime between 7 and 30 days. Need to buy not soon, so more than 30 days, or in inactive state. So when there's only one purchase in the database, or the purchase is really out of date. Like, and they're saying specifically the time that has elapsed since the last purchase is 2 times what was estimated. And the acceptance criteria for this particular issue are items in the list are shown as visually distinct. So for example, with a different background color on the list item, according to how soon the item is expected to be bought again. Soon, kind of soon, not soon, inactive. Items should be sorted. This is a lot, this one. So items should be sorted by the estimated number of days until next purchase. Items with the same number of estimated days until next purchase should be sorted alphabetically. And then items in different states should be described distinctly when read by a screen reader. So let me give you an example. Let's see. Yeah. So let's look at the wireframes for this one. So here's a populated list. And you can see, so a lot of this you've built already with the filter. So now it's going to be sorted. So the items on the top are going to be items that you're going to buy soon, like eggs. These two items, then you can see how they made a different color state for the checkbox, right? So those two are grouped together, and theoretically, they are in alphabetical order. Then secret aardvark sauce, right, is then I think over 30 days, and jalapeno poppers is an inactive. So in order to reach that accessibility criteria, you're going to want to use an ARIA label to denote how soon the user will need to buy the item, in addition to that visual indicator. So the checkbox, you're going to want to add an ARIA label, just explaining what the sort is doing. Okay, and then you don't need to worry about the delete because we've already done that one. So again, you're sorting it by need to buy soon, need to buy kind of soon, need to buy not soon. And then within each of those sorts, you're sorting it alphabetically inside of that. Okay, so that is issue 12. And then the other issue is number 13. As a user, I want to view details of my purchases to better understand my purchase patterns. The AC, so from the shopping list, the user can tap to navigate to a detailed view of the item. The detailed view includes the following information: name of the item, last purchase date, estimated number of days until the next purchase, number of times the item has been purchased. And then, when in the item details view, a back arrow should appear in the header that takes the user back to the list view. So it's navigating to this details page and then navigating back. And show you what that might look like. So here's an example of item details page. Some people have made this into a modal in the past, so that's acceptable too. You just want to remember that part of the AC you need to navigate to this view. So here's the item's name. It was last purchased on this date, the next purchase. So in the AC, it says the estimated number of days until the next purchase, and here they're showing a date. So that can be flexible. And you have purchased this item 17 times. So it's pretty awesome that you already have that array of purchase dates, right? So that'll be nice to calculate that. And then make sure that the back button needs an ARIA label indicating what will happen when you click on it. Okie doke. Does anyone have a preference for what they'd like to work on?
I like 12. I know it's a lot, but I like 12. What do you think?
Okay.
And I like sort things.
Cool. All right. So Quinn, I'll let you assign yourselves in the GitHub issues. So let's see, I'm gonna write this down. L and Q are doing sorting. Kat, are you good with the item details? Thumbs up. Item details. Perfect. Okay. And then I don't think we need to do branches during the call. Does everyone feel comfortable creating branches and pushing and pulling? Okay. Cool. All right, everyone. Good luck. The sort one is a lot, but I know you can do it. Let us know. I'm actually on vacation this week, so I'm gonna pop in and do some office hours. I'll probably pop in a couple of different times during the week just to, if people want to chat or if they have questions about what they're working on or whatever. So I'd love to talk to you. Other than that, great work. Am I missing anything? Matt, am I missing anything this week?
I don't think so, but
okay.
enjoy your vacation. Don't pop in too much.
No, I won't. You know, I think I mentioned this last week, but my kids are starting school this week. So there's a lot of tech support now in school with virtual learning. So it's just nice to not have to focus on work and like get their iPads up and running at the same time. So I'm looking forward to reading some good books and seeing what school is like this year.
Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, no, I think that's everything covered.
Nice. Nice work this week, everyone. I look forward to talking to you during the week, and good luck. Happy Labor Day. What's Canada's holiday? What's it called?
It's also Labor Day.
Also Labor Day. Happy Labor Day, everybody. All right. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you again.
All right.